Hey everyone, What If Fan here, bringing you another exciting part of What If Ichigo awoke his true powers. You can find the fanfic title and the original author's name on my Patreon page. Make sure to check it out and show them some love. If you enjoy the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring that notification bell so you never miss an upload. Also check out my Patreon channel for early releases of all the series, where you can find all the series released one day ahead of YouTube. Alright, let's jump into it. Chapter 22, Raiders of the Lost Dimension, Turn the Tables. Gotei 13. One of the strongest military organizations in the world. The primary military branch of Soul Society. An institution sheltering only the most skillful and talented Shinigami from all of the afterlife. A group of warriors keeping the prosperity of the whole place at its highest possible state, and a group of fighters which had been keeping a peace for almost 1,000 years. Now, a group of broken people, scrambling through the Siratii in attempts to save as many lives as possible. Barely a few dozen minutes had passed since the Quincy invasion had ended. The debris, the remnants of the intense fights, was everywhere. Clouds of dust obscured the full sight on the place, covered in blood of the dead and defeated. Cries of anguish, cries of pain, and cries of desperation were filling the air. Many people, many good people, had their lives ended at hands of a party calling itself a holy army. Not just unranked officers were in disarray, though. The highest ranks of the Gotei 13 had lost their lives too. Vice Captain of the 2nd Division, Captain of the 6th Division, dead. Vice Captains of the 9th Division, Vice Captain of the 13th Division, former Vice Captain of the Keto Corps, Captain of the 9th Division and Captain of the 11th Division, incapacitated. Vice Captain of the 5th Division, Vice Captain of the 3rd Division, exhausted to the point of unconsciousness. It was a dark day for the main force of Soul Society, capable of holding enemy forces from destroying the whole place. Barracks of multiple divisions had been heavily damaged, houses of ordinary people destroyed. Concrete walls had been smashed, frail windows shattered, hearts crushed. Barely anything had escaped the sudden destruction. Not even the main building of the 1st Division, where captains had had their meetings. Because of such a reason, the current, emergency meeting was being held in a single small piece of land, clear of the ever-present rubble. The captain commander had called out to all captains, conscious and unconscious. The latter ones were being treated by an apprehensive-looking Unohana on the spot, as she was making all in her power to bring them back and to keep the rest of them conscious. Even the vice-captains were present, bloodied and bruised as they were. A small ray of hope appeared in the commander's eyes when he heard the report of the captain of the 5th Division, who kept glancing at his vice-captain, sitting next to him with her eyes closed and most of her Ryuryoku reserves depleted. "Could you repeat that, Captain Hirako?" Shinji had long lost his constant half-smirk, but now, a small smile formed on his face. "Yeah, sure. We, Vizards, are still in possession of our Zanpakuto spirits. Completely. Quincy were unable to steal them. Not for the lack of trying on their part, mind you." He raised his sword for the remaining captains to see. "As it has happened to all of us, somehow, the Quincy were able to draw out our Zanpakuto spirits and then proceeded to steal them with the use of some of their techniques and seal them into their weird-ass medallions. This plan backfired when used on me, Rose and Kensei. As our souls had undergone hollowification a century ago, courtesy of my dear former Vice Captain Aizen, since then our Zanpakuto spirits had acquired a certain tint, infestation, infection, whatever. The point is, it seems the Quincy can't steal them. They tried but were forced to expel them back from the medallions once blood started to pour out of their mouths. And serves them well, blasted weirdos in completely white suits." Yamamoto sighed in relief and ignored his captain as the man continued to grumble. It seemed not all hope was lost. Captain of the 13th Division joined the conversation. "They were not the only ones spared. I was too, but that was most likely due to me being unconscious and my Ryatsu being too low." The rest of the captains stared at him until he nervously shifted on his feet, unsure of their gazes. "You have to excuse them, Jushiro. They are not used seeing you stand so proudly without going into a coughing fit, and surely not after such injuries. Something must have happened, right?" The white-haired captain glanced at Unohana, who was currently treating Kamamura. She supportively nodded to him. Clearing his throat, Yukitake smiled. Yes. I have briefly consulted it with Captain Unohana and with Captain Mayuri, but it seems that I'm completely healthy. I mean completely. Even the illness that has been plaguing my body for many centuries is gone. After a series of sharp intakes of breath, a short silence fell upon the meeting. From behind him, and with a wide smile, Kayarako patted Yukitake on his shoulder. That's amazing news, Jushiro. I'm happy for you. He whispered into his friend's ear. Yamamoto was too happy for his former pupil, but the situation was too dire for him to be capable of a smile. He broke the silence with a cough. It seems this the extent of good news, I'm afraid. The bad ones are more severe. We have lost many people. Among them was even our fellow captain of the 6th Division, Kochiki Byakuya, and the vice-captain of the 2nd Division, Marekio Omida. He sighed and allowed another brief silence to fall upon the place. He glanced at Renji and, seeing him covered in bandages and sitting next to an unconscious Rukia angrily trying to hold back the tears of anger, he had to shift his eyes to Suifoam. She was apparently taking the death of her vice-captain pretty well, but on the second glance, the old captain could see the lines of anxiety within her eyes. She was dreading the conversation with her late vice-captain's family, mainly his little sister that she quite liked. Yes, a dire situation indeed. They had expected casualties. This was, after all, a war. However, the numbers have greatly exceeded those expectations. More than half of the forces of Gotei 13 had been annihilated. Where is Mayuri-kun, actually? Jin asked in an unpleasant voice when he tore his eyes from Unohana treating his barely conscious vice-captain. Adding a suffix, kun, to my name, such an insolence. But, seeing as I'm in a good mood, I will pardon the former traitor. Mayuri's voice came from behind them. When they turned around, all of the captains stared at the man, but mainly, at the 4 figures behind him in shock, aside from Unohana, who just distastefully shook her head. I have finished regrowing the limb of the hybrid fool from the 9th Division. He should be up and punching everything around him in a short while. Silburn, the headquarters of the Wandenreich, Hell/Mukin. On a floating throne within the massive structure, completely made out of rasher, the emperor of the Quincy army sat with closed eyes, occasionally suppressing an urge to cough blood. Watching him from the right side with a worried look, Hashwalth's mouth disappeared into a thin line. That was an unplanned action, Your Majesty. You shouldn't have taken such a risk, he stated in concern. Iwak swallowed the small amount of blood in his throat and waved his hand. You are letting your soft side control you again, Hashwalth? Don't forget your place during the day. The Grandmaster bit his lip and forced himself to bow. Yes, Your Majesty. I apologize. The two of them were silent for a moment and listened only to the sound of their man making a set of preparations in the room below them. His eyes still closed, Iwak opened his mouth. I did not anticipate such a strong residual hollow taint within his soul. That just goes to show how much potential Sato Yasutura had. I find myself curious that it even erased all the abilities I have absorbed from the girl, Orihime Inoue. Interesting duo of humans. Such a shame they would never fight for our cause. Not without the support of Kurosaki Ichigo. Closing his eyes too, Hashwalth shook his head. If I may, Your Majesty. Go on, Hashwalth. Yes, thank you, Your Majesty. From the data we have acquired, I think the phenomenon of Sato Yasutura's energy erasing the abilities you have taken from Orihime Inoue could be explained using Kurosaki Ichigo himself. Iwak slowly opened his eyes and a grin formed on his face. He always liked the theories of his right hand. You had my curiosity, but now you have my attention, Hashwalth. Go on. Yes. Sato Yasutura and Orihime Inoue had gained their abilities because of the influence of Kurosaki Ichigo's spiritual energy. Both of their souls gave birth to them at the same time. I suspect the abilities of their souls are linked. Given the fact that the powers of Sato Yasutura are mainly offensive, they have reacted to the fact that they, along with the powers of Orihime Inoue, were now within one foreign souls and therefore erased them in fear they would have been misused. The Grandmaster explained in a low voice. After a short pause, Iwak replied. You are taking many liberties with the Dayton, Hashwolf. You should have informed me of such a possibility if you suspected it. I apologize, Your Majesty, however, I couldn't have predicted you were going to do such outrageous thing. Ewok stared at his right hand for a long time before his grin widened. Yes, you are a person like that, Hashwolf. Nevertheless, this was not a rash action made without any planning. Robbing Orihime of her abilities will greatly reduce the capacity of Gotei 13 to heal from serious injuries. Moreover, the energy I have gained from both of them are still within me. They are minute, but that wasn't the point. I wanted to test myself too. Since I'm in this state, it is obvious my power is still not the same as it has been 1,000 years ago. He gave his Grandmaster a long, meaningful stare, causing a pained expression to cross the man's features. I understand, Your Majesty. Consider it done. He said and sharply turned around to walk down the floating staircase before leaving the Emperor alone. He continued going across the room filled with foot soldiers controlling the many machines, along an empty hall, before finally entering a tiny, dark room where two of the Stern Ritter were on their knees. They have been moderately healed so their consciousness would return. Now, they stared in front of them, knowing what their fate was going to be. Hashwolf briefly closed his eyes. He did not like doing this while the sun was still up. The emotions he felt during this part of the day always made it hard. With a sigh, he drew out his blade. Stern Ritter N, the Negate, Nadia Wenden, and Stern Ritter P, the Parasite, Meninis McAllen. I am going to judge the ones who lost. Do you have any last words? While the girl with pink hair remained silent, the older woman opened her mouth. If that's what His Majesty orders, then I have no reason to argue. Just make sure to do this properly. I see. Hashwolf stated, and his sword fell on the woman's shoulder, only to be stopped by a translucent barrier. I told you to do this properly, Grandmaster Hashwolf. If you cannot, I'm afraid it means my time still hasn't ran out. Nadia stated with a calm voice. Hashwolf sighed. Yes, you were lucky your powers have stopped my blade. However, this luck will be your end. Tell me, Nadia Wenden, can you see the tilted scales? He said, and as a large ornamented scales appeared behind him, his blade cut through the barrier and the woman. Soon after that, the second Stern Ritter fell too. Hashwolf took a deep breath. Back in the throne room, Ewok mirrored his action. Did Nadia and Meninis die? I see, thank you, Hashwolf. You can come back to me, Nadia and Meninis, well done. I can already feel your power healing me. The energy was still scattering across the Emperor's body when Hashwolf returned. Your Majesty, I believe it is time for Phase 3 of the invasion. Karakura Town, Urahara's shop. Kezuk. Tessai, give me some cover. Ishin yelled and jumped backwards. A thin blade narrowly missed his chin before the person holding it received a flash of yellow electricity to his face. Ha, you say some outrageous things as ever, Ishin-san. Urahara nervously laughed and hastily created a hexagon-shaped barrier in front of him, successfully stopping a bright Siro aimed at his body even though the barrier got smashed in the process. Do it, Ishin-san. Heido number 73, Soren Sokatsui. Tessai ignored the sweat on his forehead and fired two bursts of concentrated blue energy at their opponent. The mildly high-level Kido spell barely slowed down the person they had been fighting for quite some time. The ancient emerged from the small cloud of explosion to show his barely signed face and modestly harmed body. So far nothing the trio managed to use on him did barely work. The first hollow was like an armored tank, his thick skin, Hiero, allowing only the strongest attacks through. Even though he had some minor cuts and bruises, the trio had been unable to draw any of his blood. No need for cover, Kurosaki Ishin. I'll give you all the time you want if it'll result in this fight becoming more interesting. The ancient exclaimed without a smile. His face was scrunched in a carefully guarded concentration. He had a job to do, to delay any form of contact between the group of Urahara's shop and the Shinigami of the Gotei 13 within Siritai. And he had been doing a great job so far, not giving the trio even a minute of rest, a moment for taking a deeper breath. It was a constant combat, constant defense, and constant offense. At the beginning of the fight, he had thought he could have defeated them right away and be done with it, but the three of them had proven to be a formidable opponent. The fight still wasn't as fierce as the one he had survived 1,000 years ago against the Captain Commander, but it was most likely only a matter of time before he would push them to it. Right now, he was even enjoying the confrontation and, therefore, allowed them use more of their abilities. It could become a valuable data for his son. As far as he knew, no one had seen Urahara Kisuke or Kurosaki Isshin releasing their Bankai for quite some time. That meant that even with Aizen's information, his son had incomplete data on them. Without any delay, Isshin reached to his inner thigh and smeared the blood flowing from a deep gash on his left palm. Bringing it to his mouth, he suppressed a grimace and licked some of the blood from it. Within his mouth, he built up his Ryatsu, mixed it with the blood on his tongue and spit the energy on his blade, causing it to explode in power. Out of the way! He yelled again and flashed past Urahara and Tessai to deliver a devastating blow at the ancient. The first hollow with a familiar mask covering his face parried the sword, and both of them were engulfed in a storm of bluish energy. Moments later, Isshin emerged from it, his clothes tattered and his skin lightly singed, but he appeared to be fine. On the opposite side, the ancient calmly walked out of the outburst of energy, cracking his neck joints while doing so. That was highly entertaining. Quite a powerful attack coming from a Shinigami in only an initial release. It was almost on the level of the blast I have received from your son some time ago, Kurosaki Isshin. However, it is still not enough to draw blood. He nodded to Isshin in acknowledgement. His torso was heavily burnt, but the gash was not deep enough to penetrate his he arrow. Isshin grimaced. Dumb, it's not like I held back. He's one tough nut to crack. Isshin-san, I don't think calling the ancient a nut is very clever. We don't want to rile him up. Urahara muttered with a sardonic and just a slightly hysterical grin. While the fear he felt at the beginning of the fight died down, it did not completely vanish from his blood. Isshin's expression turned sour before becoming serious. I know Kisuke, but it helps me from getting agitated. As things are going, I think I'll need to go Bankai on this ugly creature. Isshin-san, I don't recommend it, you know how much pressure it puts your body under. Tessai trailed off as he erected a chantless danku to stop a large torrent of Siro coming at them. It wasn't enough to stop it, however, and they were forced to relocate. Tessai frowned when the Siro continued going until it hit the barrier around their battlefield and cracked it. He hastily pushed his Ryuryoku to it and took a few shallow breaths. The forbidden Kido barrier was taking its toll on him. Isshin worriedly glanced at the former Kido Corps commander before shaking his head. We have no other choice. Unless I make him bleed, Kisuke can't use his own Bankai, and I don't see any way of harming him. Raw power doesn't seem to do enough damage. Urahara silently sent a powerful Hado towards the first hollow and clicked his tongue. Isshin-san is right. This is the ancient we're talking about. Even Captain Commander was forced to use his Bankai on him, and that was 1,000 years ago, when he was in his best form. Beniheim tells me she's ready to go Bankai, she just needs that bit of blood. As they were arguing and fighting the ancient at the same time, 3 figures appeared in the air behind the ancient and 3 bright Siro shot to the hollow's back, engulfing him in a powerful explosion. The trio of masked figures landed next to Urahara, Tessai and Isshin, who sighed in relief but looked quite surprised. Hiyori-san, Lisa-san, and Love-san. What a surprise, what are you doing here? What else, Baldy, we're saving your sorry ass. A short girl with spiky pigtails exclaimed and kicked the closest person, Tessai, in his shin. She cursed loudly when the leg proved to be sturdier than she had anticipated and started to jump on one leg. She received a smack to the back of her head from Love, who let his hollow mask crumble. Sorry we're late, but I had to drag those 2 back from their baths. Love said, hastily spun around to slap an oncoming Siro with his released Zanpakuto away. Her hair still a bit wet, Lisa looked at him in distaste. Yeah, I barely had the time to finish myself. God thanks for those great bleach doujinshi. She fumed, causing the others to stare at her in shock and almost letting another Siro hiss them dead on. Hiyori, red in face from embarrassment, tried to slap the woman on her back but stumbled and hit her ass. Have you really no shame, Lisa? Nice slap, Hiyori. You'd be a good dominatrix. The emotionless response forced even Ishin to stare at the girl with a long ponytail with gaping mouth. She could have been perfect for my stupid son. When no attack came at the group for a minute, they turned around to see the ancients sitting on the ground with an indescribable expression. Oh, don't mind me, I'm just picking my nails. Rose glanced at Urahara. Is he sulking? At that moment, a small gate of hell rose from the ground next to the hollow and a single Quincy soldier came out of it and whispered something to him. In a single motion, the ancient reached into his pocket and gave him a small device before the man in white robe disappeared along with the gate. The ancient stood back up. Well, it seems the plan is moving along. Now I definitely can't let you contact the Soul Society. His words caused a shiver to run through spines of all 6 Shinigami opposing him. Yeah, that sounds bad. Love muttered and all 3 wizards got into offensive stances. Ishin glanced at Urahara and nodded to him. We have to try and finish this. He closed his eyes and his Ryatsu began to burn his surroundings as he gradually increased the output. Bankai. Tenma and Jetsu. Asterisk. Back in Soul Society. Captain Commander's eyes were half closed as he stared at the captain of the 12th Division. I assume this is what kept you for so long in your lab, Captain Mayuri? He asked, nodding towards the 4 silent people behind the scientist. Mayuri grinned widely. Well, among other things, yes, these are my pet projects. It physically pains me to say, but thanks to Captain Unohana's expertise I've been able to finish patching them up sooner than expected. He tilted his head and, with raised eyebrows, studied the surroundings. And as I'm looking around, it seems I still wasn't in time. I heard that you bunch of idiots got yourself your Zanpakuto spirits taken away. This is a sad day for the Gotei 13. He trailed off in a sigh. You mean you still possess your Zanpakuto spirit, Captain Mayuri? Kayaraku asked, completely ignoring the insults, which continued to pour out of the scientist's mouth like a waterfall. Mayuri glared at him with outrage evident in his facial expression. Of course I do. Mayuri-sama and I were at the Lab 2X, which is completely inaccessible for anybody else than Mayuri-sama. Not even spiritual particles can penetrate its walls. The vice captain of the 12th Division, wearing a sunny, yet fluffy-looking outfit, stated from behind her captain in an emotionless voice. So you've just been lucky. Tashiro deadpanned. TCH, Ninyu, you stupid girl. Mayuri grimaced. That makes 5 captain-class fighters who are still in possession of their Zanpakuto spirits. I hope you can control your projects, Captain Mayuri, because with them able to fight at full power, we can actually fight back. Yamamoto said, the spark of hope within his eyes growing bigger. Mayuri wanted to instantly retort, but he was interrupted when the whole Suratii violently shook, causing the captains to stumble. What the heck was that? Renji growled as he massaged his scalp. He had fallen on his back and hit his head on a boulder behind him. Not sooner than he finished his question, a thick snake of black smoke rose from the ground around the walls surrounding the Suratii. In the next instant, countless hollows emerged from it, blocking the view to any part of the wall, meaning they were already inside the Shikanmaku. What caused the captain to pale was not that amount of the hollows. It was their type. There was not one ordinary hollow staring at the Suratii. A large fraction of them were Minos Grande, slow Gillians who soon after that began firing a myriad of red Siro. The rest of them were Ajuchas class hollows. Oh shit. Shinji quietly cursed and hastily summoned his mask. Shooting out his own massive Siro, he countered some of the attacks from Gillians and caused them to explode in the hollows' faces. At least there are no Vasto Lord. Kira, who had regained consciousness just moments ago, gulped hysterically. Captains of the Gotei 13, defend the Suratii. Captain Commander ordered in a booming voice just as a dark figure flashed across the place and, with a leg enveloped in yellow lightning, annihilated several Minos Grande at the west gate. Yo! Sorry I'm a bit late, had a conversation with a certain annoying quintuple. Yorochi-sama. Some emotion returned to Suifeng's face when she realized who the person was.
That makes 6 captain-class fighters with a Zanpakuto, ain't that right, Commander-san?
Jin stated with a small grin, relived his vice-captain was up again, and both of them sped towards a certain part of Siriti. From a secret, underground building located somewhere deep within the center of Siriti, a large group of Shinigami, whose faces were covered with cloth, emerged, firing a barrage of mid-level Hado spells. Keto Core, Party Alpha, help in Sector 13, Party Beta, you take Sector 14. The rest of you, scatter across the Siriti and help where you can but remain close to each other.
Yes, Commander-san.
A tall person leading the group loudly gave orders and, after watching his men position themselves to designated positions, outstretched his palms forward and fired a black ray of spiritual energy towards a large party of Minos Grande at the east gate, obliterating them in a devastating explosion. The full power of the Soul Society had finally woken up. It was time to turn the tables. Hell! With squinted eyes, Ichigo ran across a path made out of rasher, high in the air, with Yuria gliding through the air on a small rasher platform next to him. Surrounded by a thick mist, the only things his eyes could see was a wide river they had been crossing for a while, located straight below them. The silence around them was eerily calm and peaceful, completely not the image of hell Ichigo had depicted within his mind before coming there. He had not uttered a single word since entering the underworld, same as Yurio, whose gaze was firmly set forward, only few emotions flickering through his eyes. And just like with a wave of a magic wand, the fog suddenly vanished and the two young men almost stumbled, all of their 5 senses receiving a slight shock that came with the fast change of their surroundings.
Well, that was rather unpleasant. Ichigo noted with a frown.
While he had been quiet until now mostly because he didn't know what he could have said to his friend, he also had that odd, bizarre feeling he should have been silent.
This doesn't look like hell at all.
Yuria noted soon after him as they both stared at the scene in front of them. As far as their eyes could see, only a green carpet of neat grass was covering the whole surface of the large area, with only a single medieval-looking castle hindering the sight. Even then, it was so distant it appeared to them only as a tiny box of bricks. Seeing the distance, Ichigo sighed.
This is going to take more than 1 minute.
Yuria did not respond and, using his platform, began to slide forward. With another sigh, Ichigo followed him. What made the place all creepier was the fact that they still hadn't encountered a single soul, a single living entity. It was also empty, Ichigo mused with a slowly deepening frown. When he had first seen hell, it was when a hollow named Shrieker got pierced with a humongous sword held by an even larger hand. He had been surprised, so he did not pay too much attention to what was inside the Hellgate, but he was certain he had been able to hear screams, cries of agony and more loud voices that had sent shivers running through his spine. But now, nothing. There was completely nothing. It was only when they covered the vast distance and got close to the weird-looking castle they finally saw somebody. Not that they were trying to go to the castle. No matter what direction they tried to go, in the end, their path caused them to arrive there. They saw a large and long crowd of people, women, men, children and elderly, all of them slowly moving forward despite their loud protests, as their legs were being pushed by seemingly conscious chains, clipped around their ankles.
Ignore them, Ichigo. You can't help them.
Ichigo's head snapped to the side and he stared at his one Quincy friend with a clenched jaw that loosened itself after a moment.
I know.
Don't worry, I remember why we're here. They proceeded forward and went past a throne, where a large man in a hollow-looking mask sat and appeared to stare at the crown in front of him. Every once in a while, a thick chain with a heavy aura crawled from under his feet and wrapped around each person a few times, before they seemingly vanished into thin air. They were forced to walk next to him quite closely, but it looked like they were invisible to him. As soon as they crossed through a thin line behind the throne, the two of them found themselves falling through the air.
I hate surprises like this, damn it. Ichigo exclaimed and quickly pumped his Ryuryoku to his feet when he saw surface below him coming fast.
In the last moment, he slowed down and saw Yuria doing the same thing. When they landed, they took a look around.
Unlike the first area, this one had no grass at all.
It was a sandless desert with soil under their feet so dry, it had cracks everywhere. Ichigo glanced at Yuryu, who returned the look and both of them raised their eyebrows.
Still doesn't look like hell. It's too soft.
It was soon after they began crossing the desert they encountered souls. dried up, unable to walk or crawl, drinking water from a small lake, only to appear unsatisfied with it and then, further along the path, blown back and forth when a powerful and violent storm hit their bodies. Bracing when the wind hit them, Yuria blinked as he stared at a man on his right side.
I see. It's only understandable that you have ended up here.
A man with pink hair weakly raised his head and glared at him.
The Quincy. Ichigo narrowed his eyes. You know him? He asked Yuryu.
The young man in white robe grimaced.
Sailaporo Grands, the former Octava Espada.
He almost killed me and Abarisan back in Hueco Mundo. Ichigo raised his eyebrows so high, they practically disappeared in his forehead.
He then turned around and started to walk away. Saying nothing to that, Yuria did the same thing. The former Espada tried to call out to them but neither of them listened to him. He called himself immortal. Well, it seems he was wrong. Yuria stated in a low voice. Few minutes later.
What the heck is wrong with this dog? Ichigo yelled and leaned backwards. A vicious bite from one of three heads of a large dog in front him chomped the air where the teen's head was just moments ago. A shower of bright arrows forced the dog to back away.
If I'm not mistaken, this is Cerberus. Ichigo blinked. You mean the mythological beast?
Great. When a serpent's tail, protruding from the dog's back almost caused Ichigo to trip, he growled and jumped in the air.
We don't have time for this. Getsuga Tensho.
A large bluish wave of energy shot from his sword and cleaved the creature in two. Cerberus howled and his halves fell on opposite sides, but they slowly began to move towards each other and connect using some sort of regeneration.
We can't kill him. Let's move forward.
He'll be incapacitated for a while.
Yuria said. Yeah, this rain is getting on my nerves too.
Ichigo muttered, feeling an icy cold droplets of rain uncomfortably chilling his skin and making him just a bit irritated. It didn't take long before they encountered another person from the past. As he continuously fed on the souls all around him, the person with a jar filled with a liquid and two small balls instead of a head laughed hysterically.
Yes, 250th souls. Just a little more and I'll evolve. Then Aizen-sama will call for me. Ichigo glanced at Yuria with a scowl. Who is this disgusting freak? Another former Espada?
Yuria closed his eyes and tried to hold back his words but couldn't. I heard this from Kochiki-san. This should be Aranero Ararori, the former Noveno Espada. The one who almost killed her while impersonating the previous vice-captain of her division. It seems he was the one who had killed and absorbed the soul of Kai and Shiba a long time ago.
Ichigo blinked and stared at the Quincy for a long moment. His hands moved to his Zanpakuto and tightly gripped its hilt.
The icy rain failed to touch his body as his Ryatsu rose higher and sparks of black flames around him flickered in and out of existence.
You don't say.
He muttered in a cold voice.
Yuria wanted to say something but resigned to silence.
He knew Rukia would be angry at him for not stopping Ichigo, but, hearing the tone of his voice, he couldn't. Moreover, he slowly began to feel some sort of a drain from his body. As if something was sucking power out of him. He wouldn't have been able to stop his friend even if he had wanted to.
Getsuga Tensho.
With a sigh, he felt relieved that at least Ichigo was calm enough not to needlessly release his Zanpakuto.
Half an hour later.
That relief he had felt, however, did not last long. Yuria decided to heed Urahara's warning and watched Ichigo closely as they struggled to cross the following areas of hell. The next part of hell, where the punished souls were being eternally damned by getting mangled and crushed by large boulders, had been without any setbacks, but when they had arrived to the one after that, Yuria knew his friend's mind had slowly become affected by the hell's air. They were forced to cross a never-ending muddy river, a swamp, where the damned souls raged against each other and tried to kill each other for all eternity, only to be reborn a moment later, repeating the process in an infinite loop. All the yelling, screams, agonized crying, shrieking, screeching and angry howling was uncomfortable to hear.
Yuria had to admit that.
But even then, going as far as annihilating the souls in front of them with rapid series of Getsuga Tensho, had to be over the line. Ichigo was more than just obviously agitated, irritated by almost everything that was happening around him, and the black flames, source of his Zanpakuto powers, had started to flicker in and out of existence more often and stronger with each passing minute.
Yuria prayed the substitute Shinigami would not snap before they got to their goal destination.
The next part of hell, where the muffled cries barely rose from within flaming tombs below their feet, had its temperature increased, only adding fuel to Ichigo's flames. They rose even higher when they entered the next layer and had to fight another mythical creature with the head of a bull on the body of a man, the Minotaur. But still, Ichigo was able to suppress his flames. But nothing could remain forever, and the black darkness erupted from him when the two of them encountered another figure, this time known only to Ichigo.
"Shrieker," he said in a low voice.
Wordlessly releasing his Zanpakuto, Ichigo shot forward to the hollow that had once tormented a soul of a pure boy before Yuria could even blink.
"Damn it.
If we continue like this, I'll lose all of my strength and Ichigo all of his sanity before we even arrive to Muken.
Kurosaki Ichigo, huh? We meet again, you bastard. This time it won't be the same.
As a Taiga Beto, my power has been increased in dash." That was all the former hollow was able to say before he was completely obliterated by a wave of black fire.
"Shut up."
With that, they continued going deeper and deeper, until they finally reached the lowest level of hell, the ninth circle, where the temperature dropped to freezing degrees and where the whole area was covered with a thick layer of ice. Using the small device they had received from Urahara earlier, Yuria quickly assessed the situation and spotted a small portal leading to Muken. There was only one problem, though. It was situated behind a large throne. The throne, along with the person in it, had a half of its whole body under a hard layer of ice. The person there was a large monster, closely resembling a hollow with its odd mask.
The problem lied in what the monster was gnawing on.
Yurio and Ichigo froze in their tracks when their brains realized who those two bloodied bodies in its mouth were. The first one was a woman with black hair tied into a ponytail and a pale skin, while the other one was a woman with bright orange hair and a face radiating warmth, if it wasn't for all the blood.
Kurosaki Masaki and Ishida Katajiri.
Mother of Kurosaki Ichigo and mother of Ishida Yuryu. Blood bubbled within Yurio's veins, and only to his unbreakable logical mind he was able to grasp his sanity before he would snap. Only one piece of information made him realize what they were seeing wasn't real, couldn't be real. His mother had been a Quincy, whose soul, after her death, had gone to Muken to Awake. Her whole, pure soul, and the one with hell's chains around her ankles currently in the monster's mouth. What he was seeing was just a mere illusion. Hearing a hysterical, but mildly quiet, laughter on his side, he gulped. It seemed Ichigo's mind wasn't able to take the sight, and he wasn't able to realize this was but an illusion. Or maybe he did but just didn't care. He snapped. The black fire erupted from around him with such intensity, Yuria had to hastily pull back or risk getting blasted by Ichigo's power. "I'm going to murder you and then the whole damned Quincy army along with Iwak," Ichigo darkly muttered and, crushing the ground beneath his feet, jumped towards the monster. His blade, covered in a thick layer of blackness, began to fall on the monster's head when a dense wall of ice got into the way and blocked the strike. It crumbled under the sheer pressure of the swing, but it successfully prevented the teen from touching the monster.
"Ichigo, calm down. It's not real, it's just an illusion. That is not your mother," Yuryu yelled. With wide eyes, he rolled to the side when a wave of flames shot towards him. He almost snapped himself and shouted at Ichigo, but stiffened when the teen turned his head towards him. Ichigo said nothing, just sent a chilling glare at the Quincy, who gulped when he noticed his friend's eyes. They were completely black, filled with the darkness that blocked any light from getting inside. "Oh crap," Yuria thought grimly.
He felt weak from the whole journey through the hell and was in no condition to stop his friend. And surely not in this berserk state. So he just shut up. To his tiny bit of relief, Ichigo turned back to Monster. "At least he's not attacking me." Since it was in his best interest to make sure the situation, Ichigo not attacking him, would remain the same, once in a while, Yuria formed his rapier bow and shot a few arrows at the monster's blind spot. It didn't do much damage, much to the Quincy's displeasure. Not only he felt weak but, apparently, his ability to draw rapier from his surroundings was damped too.
Or maybe the hell just didn't contain regular spiritual particles. Either way, despite that, his projectiles still managed to irritate the monster, which in turn made Ichigo's attempts at its life easier. But the battle dragged on. Even if the monster received a serious injury or lost a limb, it regenerated in a matter of instants. The speed of the regeneration far surpassed any kind of high-speed regeneration Yuria had seen so far. It had occurred to the young Quincy that maybe they didn't have to really fight the monster, and so, while Ichigo kept relentlessly striking it from each side, Yuria tried to blitz around it and enter the portal. No success there. He was blasted backwards as soon as his skin touched the portal. When he shook off the impact, his brow creased in a frown. He was almost afraid the portal itself did it, which would pose a problem. If it didn't allow a passage to them, how were they supposed to enter the Mukin? But his anxiety died down when he noticed the long tail protruding from the monster's backside and was currently flailing in front of the portal. So he took me out with a tail. Yuria then attempted to evade the tail and enter the portal again. Not once, not twice, but several times, but every single time, the monster used its tail to literally slap him away from it. After so many failed attempts, Yuria had to admit this plan wasn't going to work. They really needed to get rid of the monster, somehow. Taking a mild risk, he called out to the substitute. "Ichigo! We can't enter the portal unless we incapacitate him." He omitted the part that what they were seeing in the monster's mouth was an illusion. Telling the orange-haired teen the same thing twice had never worked in the past, so why would he waste his breath now? He just hoped the small, functioning part of Ichigo's brain would understand what he was saying. Cautiously watching, Yuryu prepared himself to jump away when Ichigo landed next to him. Fortunately, he just nodded and with a quick movement of his sword, drew blood on one of his fingers. Yuria didn't understand what his friend was doing. At least for a short instant. Ichigo smeared the bit of blood on his palm, raised it and aimed it at the howling monster and opened his mouth. The voice that came out of it was weirdly distorted, in a similar fashion as when he had used his hollow mask in the past. Gran Rey Zero. The bright, crimson-red torrent of energy rippled through the air and smashed the ice barrier that had erected in front of the monster like a bullet hitting a single paper. It continued further and enveloped the monster in a violent explosion. When it died down, Yuria shook his head. He wanted to be impressed by the show of power, but it seemed he got used to anything his transcendent friend could do. The whole upper part of the monster's body was missing and its legs, the only thing remaining, fell down. It appeared the regeneration had already begun, but it was considerably slower than before. Using that to their advantage, Yuria carefully pointed to the portal and, along with Ichigo, hurried towards it. In the last attempt to slow them down, the monster's tail shot towards them and Yuryu almost cursed, but Ichigo swatted it away like an annoying fly. As they jumped through the portal, Yuria grimaced. "I hope he can turn back. I don't like this Kurosaki Ichigo. Mukun. This is Hashwolf-sama." One of the Quincy soldiers in front of a computer gulped and called out to the Grandmaster, when he noticed two small dots coming close to the area where the Wandenreich had its headquarters. "What is it?" Hashwolf asked after walking to the man. The soldier silently pointed at two dots. "I see. I'll alert His Majesty. You know what to do. Mukin, elsewhere." They had been running across the thick blackness for a while, keeping tracks on each other only thanks to Urahara's devices, but Yurio's face, covered in the deep shadows, was more relaxed than before. Since leaving the real hell, his strength had begun to slowly return, erasing most of the fatigue he had felt during the journey. Moreover, thanks to the beeping on the small device in his pocket, he knew they were getting close to their destination. As the time passed, he quickly ran over many different scenarios that could happen once they set their feet into the enemy territory. None of them were very pleasant or optimistic, but he wasn't about to back away when he was getting so close. And just like that, they appeared in a large area, a city of some sorts, made completely out of spiritual particles that took form of an ice. The beeping of the device reached its peak. "We're here," he announced to Ichigo, who showed a disturbing grin. His next action completely shattered most of Yurio's intentions of silent approach to this mission. Getsuga Tensho. A huge crescent wave of energy tore into the city and they could hear cries of pain as a large explosion cleared out the area.
Yuria blinked, his brain momentarily unable to comprehend the stupidity of the action when Ichigo opened his mouth.
We should announce our presence accordingly. With that, he jumped in the air, ready to meet the enemy.
Yuria finally shook of the surprise and was already voicing his objections when he hastily slapped a hand across his mouth.
A realization dawned upon him.
What Ichigo did wasn't as stupid as it had appeared to be at first sight. With this act of aggression, the substitute got most of the attention of the enemy, leaving Yuria to move alone while he dealt with anybody. It still wasn't as good as some of Yurio's plans, it was still good enough for a berserker. When another explosion scattered the cloud of smoke up in the air, Yuria took out his device and moved.
With Ichigo
standing on a high tower made of ice, Ichigo didn't have to wait long for the enemy to drop around his location. From the looks of it, it seemed that the Quincy army wasn't even slightly surprised at the arrival of the substitute. Not one foot soldier headed towards him, on the contrary, all of them hurried to get away from him. Even if they didn't have their orders, they wouldn't have stayed to fight him. They all knew they couldn't have even slow him down. Instead, only Quincy in prestigious robes appeared and surrounded Ichigo, with one exception, each one standing in a reasonable distance. The one who arrogantly tried to get too close was a large man with a beard.
Driscoll Bursey. Stern Ritter O, the overkill. I finally meet the most important special power, Kurosaki Ichigo, in fight. I'm delighted.
He landed in front of Ichigo and introduced himself in a booming voice, before cocking his right fist back and throwing it at the substitute. To the great shock of the man, with a tiny smirk, Ichigo deftly caught the punch with his left hand, causing his sleeve to pull back and show the web pattern on the skin of his arm. One downward slash skin later, and the man dropped at the ground, burnt to crisp with the black fire erupting from Ichigo.
Yeah, pleasure to meet you,
he stated in his bizarre voice, the darkness still within his eyes. The action stirred a bit of a ruckus in the rest of the Sternritters, Sternritter J, the JL, Quilljopi, Sternritter L, the Lag, Shesdomino and Sternritter S, the superstar, masked a masculine, who immediately assumed their stances.
It seems introducing ourselves would be less than productive,
Quilj noted and, along with Shaz, fired a salvo of arrows at Ichigo, while Mask kicked the ground and jumped behind the barrage to deliver a crushing dropkick. A wave of black flames annihilated all projectiles and heavily singed Mask's legs when the man punched the ground to change the direction of his flight.
Arg, damn you villain. James, I need the support of my fans,
Mask yelled, growling from the excruciating pain that his attack had given him. But the blood had saved him from the worst effect of the black flames and he didn't hallucinate. He waited until the bell rang enough times, before most of his clothes vanished.
Yeah. I feel you, my fans, I hear you, my fans. You too don't want to see the hero to fall. You want to see the villain down on the ground, he exclaimed, and a halo appeared above his head. The three of them had received orders to use all of their powers to slow down Ichigo. Star Lariat.
He swung down his arm and sent a powerful shockwave through the air, straight at Ichigo.
Lad Knives.
From aside, Shes threw a considerable amount of his rapier knives, while on the other side of the battlefield, Quilj, with a halo on his head, began to suck out rapier particles from a nearby building to power up a large arrow, which he shot at the substitute's back. The building all around the team collapsed from the joint attack.
They all hit the mark,
Quilj quietly stated. In the next moment, he found himself impaled through the stomach and coughed blood. To the Sternritter's surprise, Ichigo was still unharmed. The remnants of his shield were still at his previous location.
Damn you,
he muttered and fell down. Shez already threw another set of knives, but even with the use of his special power, he wasn't fast enough to actually hit the substitute and only succeeded in pushing him away.
But that was enough.
Mask was already in the air, flying above the area in a certain pattern.
Take this. Star Flash, Supernova.
He yelled, and a massive star-shaped blast of energy crashed into the ground, creating an immense explosion upon impact.
Ha! Farewell, villain.
Through the smoke from the explosion, a shot of bright energy headed towards the place where Ichigo had been, as Quilge slowly stood up again, supported by strings of Raisher. "I will fulfill my mission even if I have to die." He yelled and coughed more blood. "Do take it slow, Quilge."
You think he survived Mask's attack?
Shaz asked and played with his Raisher knife.
Quilge just silently pointed towards the smoke.
When it cleared, Ichigo stood there, trapped in a Raisher cage but only mildly injured. He was singed and his clothes burnt, but still, no blood was visible.
"You have some good endurance, for a villain,"
Mask muttered with a serious expression.
Inside the cage, Ichigo narrowed his eyes and touched the cage, only to get shocked as if hit with an electrical current.
He stayed still for a moment, before reaching with his hand again. This time, the Raisher construct crumbled.
"Ah well, it was too good to be true,"
Shaz lazily stated, but there was a definite hint of a worry in his voice. "I see, despite allying yourself with twisted and barbaric Shinigami, you still do possess a bit of what is holy and righteous within."
"That is, an abhorrent sight.
Truly.
Makes my blood curl."
With those words, the three stern Ritter attacked again.
They lasted exactly 1 more minute.
After he defeated them, Ichigo eagerly awaited the arrival of other enemies, but what happened next blew his clouded mind. The very ground beneath his feet started to change. As if a large shadow slowly passed across the whole place, all ice buildings, all ice constructs belonging to the Quincy army seemingly disappeared, only to get substituted by buildings he could remember.
Buildings of Siriti.
He cursed and wanted to flash away, but he was stopped when a light arrow hit him in his back. With a groan, he turned around. Putting down his bow, Ryukin gazed straight back at him. That wraps up this part of What If Ichigo Awoke His True Powers.
Thanks so much for listening.
As always, new parts drop every 4 days, so be sure to stay tuned. Also check out my Patreon channel for early releases of all the series, where you can find all the series released 1 day ahead of YouTube. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, share it with your friends, and please consider supporting the original author as well.
See you in the next one.